welcome back to my YouTube channel. As always, I am so excited to be bringing you guys another video. So we're gonna have some girl talk today, y'all. We have not had girl talk in a while. Let's talk about some wedding tea, y'all. Something that I see on social media often is people will say, should you have the big wedding or should you put the money into a down payment on the house? I've also seen people say things like, everybody I know that had a big wedding broke up, it's not worth it, you shouldn't have a big wedding, it's a mess, and you know, all kinds of other stuff. So I want to really weigh in on this because y'all know that me and my husband, we actually did both. We went to the courthouse, you know, in November when we initially got married, November 5th, 2018. And then 6 months later was when we had our big wedding with all of like our family and friends and, you know, that whole type of thing. So I'm going to share with you guys how I feel about it, like from my perspective, but then I'm going to kind of like get into a little bit of some of like the pros and cons of having a big wedding, and hopefully this helps you, you know, make the best decision based on, you know, your beliefs or your needs or whatever, so that you can decide if you want to have a big wedding or not. So for me, I am absolutely pro have a big wedding, and I'm going to tell you why I'm pro have a big wedding. Here is the thing. People always have a small wedding or have no wedding under the idea that we can have the wedding later. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that. Oh, we'll just go to the courthouse and we can have the wedding later. Oh, you know, we'll just do something small with like, you know, 5 or 6 of our closest friends, and then we'll have the big wedding later. And then later life happens. Now you're buying a house. Now you have kids. Now, you know, so-and-so is in between jobs. Now so-and-so's business is not doing what it was. And so then this whole big wedding that you said that you were going to have, basically, you know, you never really have it. I'm going to give y'all like my, you know, quick story with that. When me and my husband, like I said, we went to the courthouse in November and we got married. And then 6 months later, you know, we had our big wedding. But in between that time, we got pregnant. Literally smack dab 3 months in between that time, we got pregnant. So guess what? When we had our big wedding and the conversation came up of where we wanted to go for our honeymoon, I straight up said to my husband, I'm tired. I want to go home after the wedding. I'm tired. I don't want to deal with, you know, having to go out of the country and deal with customs and, you know, all kind of stuff. I was like, I'm tired. I'm like, you know, we can have the honeymoon later. That was my exact line. Well, guess what, y'all? We'll be celebrating 4 years in November and we still have not had our honeymoon. Now, granted, we've had a lot of traveling that we've done. And of course, you know, you got to throw COVID in there. You know, COVID was a big reason for that as well. But I say that to say it's so easy to put something off when you're already in the midst of your life. You know, when you're getting married and you're planning your wedding and all of those things, like that's a memory, that's a place that you never really get back to, you know, that exact feeling. So I really think that it's important to do what you want to do when you want to do it, because people always say I'm going to have the big wedding later and they never do. Another reason why I am pro big wedding is because I feel like you have the right to be celebrated for being married. Like, you should be able to celebrate in the way that you want to celebrate. Your family and friends who have watched y'all's love story, who oftentimes, you know, when you get into your marriage, you don't talk to certain family members and certain friends as much as maybe you used to. I think that that deserves to be a big celebration. It deserves to be a time where people can come together, they can break bread together, they have amazing memories. Like, it deserves to be something that people can say, wow, I remember that wedding. One of the reasons why I always knew I wanted to have a big wedding is because growing up, I didn't go to a lot of weddings. You know, people in my family were married, yeah, but you know, it wasn't really big weddings all the time. My parents, for example, when my parents got married, they went to the courthouse. And it was a whole big thing that they would have a big wedding later and, you know, all this other stuff. But guess what happened on their wedding night? The child was conceived. So, you know, that's how it happens. Like, life happens and it just keeps on continuously getting pushed back. Also, when I was growing up, because I didn't see a lot of like weddings and things like that, it made me feel like, well, do people get married anymore? Is that something that's like out of style? Like, how come I'm never going to a wedding? So I have a lot of little cousins, right? I also have a niece. So I thought it was important for them to actually see me getting married. I thought it was important for them to actually see, you know, a day of me looking like a princess. You know, I had this big dress on, this long gown on with this, you know, 20-foot train, you know, coming behind me. Everything inside of there is white. It's decorated, you know, really beautifully. But in the midst of that, we're having a good time. Like, I felt that that was something that was so important for the next generation to see, because I wanted my little cousins, I wanted my niece, I want them to know that you're worthy of this. You know, and it's not about material things, but you're worthy of having the marriage and the wedding experience that's something that you actually desire. I also think that it's important to have a big wedding, because if you want that, but your partner doesn't want that, you don't want this to be a point of contention. You don't want to be the wife that 5 years into your marriage, you're angry because you're still bringing up the fact that your husband didn't give you the wedding that you wanted. So I know it might be some men watching this, so let me just kind of talk to y'all for a second. I'm not saying that this should be something that should cause a beef between you and your spouse. Obviously, you want to make sure that you really crunch the numbers and you want to really plan as best as you can. This is why some people have a 2-year engagement, you know, and then they have the wedding so that they can really finance and pay for the wedding that, you know, they want to have. So I feel like there's a ton of ways, you know, to make it work. Also, one of the things that me and my husband did, even though we had a big wedding, we were very mindful of like, what are the things, like we literally made a list with our wedding planner of what were the things that we were willing to splurge on, and what were the things that didn't matter to us, and what were the things that were like, I want to spend a little bit of money on it, but you know, not so much. Obviously, the food, the decor, like those are going to be the things that like cost the most, the venue. So the things that weren't important to us was, we didn't care about having a wedding on the water. We didn't care about having a wedding at, you know, the biggest hotel right in the middle of the city. Like, location to us, like, wasn't so much a thing. So even though we had a big wedding, that was something that really enabled us, you know, to save a lot of money. We also didn't care about pulling up in a Bentley, you know, at the wedding. We didn't care about having, you know, a fancy car, you know, sitting outside just to take a photo. Not to shade anyone if that's something that they want to do, but that just personally was not something that, you know, we actually cared about. We wanted to make sure that we had a great videographer. We wanted to make sure that we had a great photographer. Honestly, and I don't know how crazy, you know, this is going to sound, but the dress honestly was like not a big thing for me. Like, I mean, I had the whole experience of like going to like, you know, the bridal boutique and trying on the dresses and, you know, that whole thing. But I remember there was this one dress that I tried on. She put it on me. It fit really well. And I was like, you know, how much is this? And when she told me that it was going to be $3,400, I immediately asked her to take it off of me. Because I don't even need to look in the mirror. Because I already know that I'm not buying a dress. You know, it was important to me, but I didn't want to take away money from the decor to put into my dress. So I remember there was another associate at the bridal boutique that was walking past me, and I saw a dress, and I was like, oh my goodness, what is that? What is that dress? I'm like, I want to try that dress on. So she goes and she brings me the dress. And I try it on and I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh my God, this is the one. And I'm praying in my mind that this dress is not $3,400 because I've already decided, you know, basically that this is the one. So she tells me, she says, do you know that we have this dress here on loan from another bridal boutique, and we were about to send it back because nobody has been asking to try it on. So it was almost like that dress was basically sitting there waiting for me. So when I asked her, I'm like, well, how much, you know, is the dress? I think that my wedding dress was like $1,200. And to a lot of people, that probably still seems like it's a lot to spend on a dress. But I'm going to let y'all know that $1,200 is actually like on the lower inside of a wedding dress when you're, you know, at like a bridal boutique. So here's the thing about the wedding dress. They tell you the price of the wedding dress, but they don't necessarily tell you how much all of the alterations are going to cost. And so that's why you want to make sure that you're staying within a certain budget, but also allocating funds for whatever the alterations are going to cost. My alterations probably ended up being like around like between $600 and $700. So when all was said and done, I had an almost $2,000 wedding dress. So imagine if I would have went with a $3,400 wedding dress. And I remember when I asked her to take it off me, she's like, you know, because of how that dress is made, the alterations alone on it probably were going to cost you between $800 and $1,000. So I would have been spending almost $5,000 just on my wedding dress that I'm only wearing one time. So that is, you know, really something that, like I said, it wasn't a big thing for me. But also another way that you can justify some of your expenses for having a big wedding is figuring out how you're going to repurpose them. Like with my wedding dress, I already was looking into how do I want to repurpose this wedding dress. So I said that out of my train, I was going to get a pillow made for each of our children, however many children we have. I also said that I was going to get like a photo frame like made with some of the material, you know, from my wedding dress, get a photo album made. So there are tons of ways to repurpose your wedding dress so that it doesn't look like, oh my God, I spent $2,000 on something that basically, you know, I only wore, you know, for one day. Also with me and my husband's wedding, we wanted to make sure that we invested a lot of money into the memories. So me and my husband are not like drinkers, but we have, you know, a lot of people in our family that like to get a little libation, you know, kind of thing going on. So that was something that we didn't even have to worry about paying a separate expense for. That was something that like came, you know, with our package, like the open bar and, you know, stuff like that. So that allowed people to get their little wine and, you know, feel a little relaxed and, you know, however they wanted to feel. Also, we wanted to have a photo booth, but every time we would call somebody and say, hey, you know, we want to get like a photo booth going for our wedding, people would hear the word wedding. That's another thing. Be careful using the word wedding when you're like reaching out to different vendors. They would hear the word wedding and immediately a photo booth that was $600 is now $1,800 plus, you know, 25% in gratuity. Huh? But how come? Yeah, like when they hear the word wedding, it changes things. So do y'all know, it was 2 days before our wedding, and we were like, dang, you know, we really want this photo booth. We really want, you know, people to be able to bask in the memories and really be able to just like have pictures that they can get like immediately from our wedding, right? And so I'm talking to my mom about it, and she's like, oh, I see like photo booths all the time on GroupMe. On, what is it, Groupon? Oh yeah, it's Groupon. She's like, I see photo things all the time on Groupon. Do y'all know we found like our wedding photo booth for like $300? And people were out here paying, you know, $1,800, $2,500 just because, you know, they're like, oh, it's a wedding. So it's still ways to have a big wedding, but to have a big wedding that is more so like budgetary. Another place that we kind of like cut corners at was the ceremony. I remember our designer wanted to put like this big, like gorgeous, like bouquet of flowers like in the front, and it was going to be like just rows of flowers and just all, I mean, it was just going to be flowers everywhere, to the point that just the decor for the ceremony alone was going to come up to like $7,000. When I realized that people were only going to be sitting in that room for 30 minutes, I said, oh, absolutely not. So I found somebody that could do a nice setup. And I want to say the setup for the ceremony probably ended up costing like $200. They brought in some faux flowers up in there. They brought in some things that we could rent. They brought in some columns. And that was it. I'm like, people are going to be in here for 30 minutes. So we're not even going to get, you know, a lot of like photos in here. So there are so many ways to have a big wedding, but to still have it under budget. Also, the people that you invite, you know, are people going to be able to bring somebody that they've been dating for 5 minutes? That didn't go at our wedding. Like, no. If we don't know them, if both of us don't know them, if y'all been dating for 5 minutes, y'all ain't serious, then, you know, you weren't invited to our wedding. That's just how it was. Also making sure that you are renting or using a venue that has kids plates. I'm not paying $120 for a plate of food that a child is not going to eat. We made sure, I think the kids plates at our wedding were like $12 or something like that. They got chicken tenders and fries, you know, so it was nice because we still were able to invite the kids, and, you know, we were able to pay a lot less for their plates versus, you know, of course, what we were paying for the adult plates. So that's my thoughts on it. Y'all already know, you know, I am totally pro big wedding. I totally feel like you can't put a price tag on memories. But I also understand the other side of things and why people feel like I am absolutely not doing this. I just think that it's something that you want to talk to your future spouse about and make sure that y'all are on the same page about it, because if you have a spouse that's like, I absolutely do not want a big wedding, and you know that that's what you want, I can guarantee you that that might be something that will cause a problem. So I would just say be creative, you know, to really figure out like how y'all are going to still have a nice wedding, you know, without breaking the bank. Also for me, like, because I always knew that I wanted to have a big wedding, I started a wedding savings account years, you know, before we actually had our wedding. And thankfully also we had family, you know, that chipped in and helped us out and things like that. So we didn't have to deal with financing a wedding on a credit card or taking out, you know, a loan for a wedding and things like that. And I think that's a factor as well. Like, everybody that has a big wedding is not going broke, you know, trying to pay for a wedding. And I think that people look at it like, oh, well, you know, you could have spent this money on this, but you can have a big wedding and still have your stocks too. So even though those are my thoughts on a big wedding, I want to hear from you guys. Comment below, did you have a big wedding? If you did, do you regret it? If you didn't have a big wedding, do you regret it? I would love to know like what you guys' thoughts are. It's been so much fun to do this video and just kind of like give an opinion piece and like talk about something, you know, that's a little bit more fun. So I would love to hear from you guys about it. I mean, me personally, I feel like when we were in the midst of planning the wedding, I would wonder like, am I going to feel like this was all a joke? Like, you know, like a few years later, you know, am I going to regret this? And, you know, how do I feel? And thankfully, you know, I do not regret it. Like, I'm very grateful for the experience, you know, that we created for our family and for ourselves. Like, our wedding is still something that people in our family talk about, and I feel like, you know, that's what we wanted, was to be able to create those memories. Now, would I be the type of person that I'm like, oh, you know, 5-year vow renewal, let's have a big, no. But that's why I'm so thankful that we did it like that, you know, with that wedding, because I don't feel like I missed anything. You know, my husband and I have talked about like doing a vow renewal like every 5 years. And we both agreed, like, you know, let's like literally go to an island, you know, with ourselves. Like, we could maybe take a couple of our friends and have a fun trip, and that's it. Like, we don't need to like do all of that, which is why, again, you know, I'm so grateful that we had that for our wedding, because neither one of us feel like I wish we had this, or, you know, I missed out on that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe. It's been so much fun talking about something a little bit more relaxed and fun with you guys, and I will see y'all in the next video.